Hello there, you are welcome. Today, like we announced at our last outing, is our conference edition. And indeed, our conference went out today with a bang. We had a theme, Trust in Governance, and we had some creme de la creme came over, and they came to deliver papers, both at plenary, and we had a humongous opening ceremony. That trust in governance is a sine qua non was part of what everybody mentioned. We must find a way to shorten the trust deficit. We must continually believe that we can hold our governments to account at all levels. That basically is the theme of our conference today. And we had a retinue of speakers who came to give us their thinking global and acting local. I'd like you, stay back, watch, and see how it all went. And as usual, ICAN on air, not only just a force to be reckoned with, we are a sine qua non when it comes to deploying education under integrity, trust, accountability, and accuracy. Please sit back, watch, and enjoy the razzmatazz that took place at our 51st ICAN conference in Abuja, Nigeria today. Stay put, watch, we'll soon be back.
To do this, I needed the support of all of our 80 African and non-African shareholder countries for a massive general capital increase for the bank. At the time, several well-meaning people told me that it could not be done. One even said the idea was dead. On arrival. Others said no first-time president in the history of the African Development Bank has ever taken the risk of expending so much political capital with shareholders. But it was a risk I was willing to take to achieve greater impact in the lives of people in Africa, and one that had to rely on trust. Trust in my ability and that of my team to deliver results. Finally, in 2019, the bank shareholders approved an increase in the bank's capital from $93 billion to $208 billion. A 125% increase. It was the largest general capital increase ever since the establishment of the African Development Bank in 1964. But it was not just about financial resources. It is also about transparency, integrity, efficient management, delivery, and the impact on the lives of people. In the past 5 years, the bank's work has impacted on the lives of 335 million people. In 2020, Published What You Fund ranked the African Development Bank as the 4th most transparent institution in the world. Out of 47 global development finance institutions on the Global Index of Transparency. And this year, the US magazine, the prestigious US magazine Global Finance, ranked the African Development Bank as the best multilateral financial institution in the world. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a clear indication of trust gained at the global scale. It is the same in every area of public and private enterprise. A leader's reputation and his reputational equity rises or falls on the basis of results, trust, and integrity. Consequently, leaders must mean what they say and say what they mean, as well as deliver on their promises. When the impact of your output is tangibly felt, trust is the end result. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we must earn the trust of the youth of Africa and use them as a potent force for national development. Forgotten, undervalued, underutilized. A lot of you today have a high level of distrust for governments. That must change. Just think of the numbers and the implications. Today, 60% of Africa's 1.2 billion people are under the age of 25. We must prioritize the youth, because what we do with and to our youth will determine our future. We hold our positions in trust for the present and for the future generations. We must learn from other countries. Consider Singapore. In 2019, the Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore was a guest of mine at the African Development Bank's Eminent Speaker Series. He said something that challenged me, that Singapore's most important asset was its human capital, and that the most important position in the government of Singapore was the Minister of Education. Singapore prioritized education for its youth to make them globally competitive in the world of technology and innovation, to boost its leadership position in global markets. It trusts its youth. It values its youth. And it shows this by giving top priority to unleashing their potential. Now think again of the following. Singapore spends $12.8 billion on education in 2018. They spent $12.8 billion on education. And they spent $20 billion on education in 2020. Today, Singapore ranks at the top in global education. Its first-rate human capital, led by its young, dynamic, and well-trained population, powers its knowledge economy, driven by high technology industries, electronic manufacturing, including machinery and computers, medical equipment, shipping, and global financial services. Nigeria has a huge youth asset, but they will remain illiquid assets until we unlock their full potential. Therefore, we must invest in our youth. We must gain the trust of the youth and place our trust in them by making them the best assets of the nation. This is why at the African Development Bank, we are exploring with countries, including Nigeria, the establishment of youth entrepreneurship investment banks. They will be banks for young Africans, run by young Africans, that will provide long-term financing that will help to unleash the business entrepreneurship potential of Africa's youth. We must see the future and build it from today. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, leadership is a position of trust. This includes trust in the judicial system. The justice system is what sets the boundaries of acceptable conduct for people, institutions, governments, and society in general. However, when judicial systems are subjugated to the dictates of the executive arms of governments, or controlled or manipulated by powerful individuals, trust is eroded. Any nation that does not respect and uphold the rule of law can never develop. It will only atrophy or descend into chaos. The symbol in the halls of the courts of justice, the blindfolded Lady Justice, is supposed to be blind. But when the blindfold has holes in it, justice is selectively dispensed to the benefit of the rich and powerful and trample on the rights of the poor. There is a direct and strong correlation between the rule of law and investments. Think of it. Who will want to invest in a place where there is no rule of law, respect for individual rights, freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom in times of protection of property rights, of intellectual property rights, copyrights and patents, the rights to legally acquire or to dispose of assets? GDP does not just grow. GDP grows because of economic activities, and economic activities thrive where there is rule of law. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the public sector is vital for the private sector to thrive. You often hear theories that call for smaller governments, for governments to get out of the way and let the private sector do things. Well, to some extent that is correct. However, the role of government is not to produce anything other than the right policies, regulations, rules, laws, and procedures in order to catalyze economic growth and accelerate social development. What is needed is not less government, but better and more accountable governance. The performance of governments therefore depends on the effectiveness of the civil service. As an economist, I like to look at things in terms of input to output ratios. So it is not how much input you get in, it is how much output you achieve. Ultimately, it is all about efficiency. If the civil service, the engine room of government, is faulty, nations become faulty, and society suffers. We must revamp the public sector to make it leaner, much more professional, with transparent systems, enhance public accountability, and a performance system where citizens rate the quality of services provided. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, adopting the concept of social capital stocks can enhance the quality of public service provided. Let me explain so I'm well understood. Every society needs services such as education, health, energy, infrastructure, water, sanitation, housing, security, and social security. We can call these social capital stocks. The higher the social capital stocks of countries, the wealthier, the more equitable and prosperous nations become. We must think of and run the public sector just like you will run high-performing private sector corporations, which are held to high standards and accountability. When CEOs go to work, the first thing they do is check the state of their share and stock prices, and all of you do that. You're all business leaders. They have to. They are hired and rewarded to ensure that share prices keep rising. The same principle must be applied to the public sector, with leaders understanding that they are responsible and accountable for developing social capital stocks. The current civil service model must give way to a new service delivery mindset, focused primarily on building the nation's social capital stocks. To improve morale, enhance effectiveness, expand service delivery, and reduce corruption, in the same manner that a CEO is rewarded when share prices rise, public sector workers that produce higher social capital stocks should likewise be well remunerated. The best of the best must be attracted into revamped public sectors with the explicit mandate of expanding the quality of service delivery for the people and justifying taxes paid into the coffers of government. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, conventionally, one would expect that private capital will move to where the rate of return on capital is high. This, however, is not always the case. What is sure, however, is that private capital always moves to places where social capital stocks are high. That is why someone can take funds from a developing country where, due to lack of infrastructure, returns on investment will normally be high, and put the funds in places like Switzerland, where the returns may be low, but where the social capital stocks are high, or even higher. Therefore, the necessary and sufficient conditions are that private capital will always flow to where social capital stocks are high. Understanding this linkage between private and social capital stocks is fundamental to rethinking government and the public service, the engine room of government. Here is the lesson. The better the quality of performance of governments in building social capital stocks, the higher the trust of private sector in the society, and the higher the level of private capital formation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the fundamental basis of any society is social contracts between the government and the citizens. These social contracts are embedded in the payment of taxes. Taxes form a significant part of government revenue. Now, governments are always eager to collect taxes, but the real question is whether there is congruence between tax revenue generation and accountability to citizens in fulfilling expected social contracts. Think of the following. While tax rates are relatively low in Nigeria, it simply is not an excuse to keep increasing taxes however. Take the case of Norway, for example. Its tax to GDP ratio is 39%. Singapore's tax to GDP ratio is 13.2%. And Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio is 6.1%. And so it's easy to make the comparison and say, Nigeria needs to raise its taxes to similar levels as in Norway or Singapore, right? But also consider now the following. In Norway, education is free through university level. In Singapore, a country that had 1/3 of Nigeria's per capita income at its independence in 1965, today has 100% access to electricity, 100% access to water. Now, while progress is being made, the challenge, however, is that in many parts of Nigeria, citizens do not have access to basic services that governments should provide as part of the social contracts. People sink their own private boreholes to their water. They generate their own electricity, sometimes with diesel. They build roads to their own neighborhoods. They provide security for themselves sometimes. These are implicit taxes borne by society due to either inefficient government or government failure. As such, we must distinguish between nominal taxes and implicit taxes. That is, taxes that are borne by the people but are not seen or recorded. It has become so common that we do not even bother to question it. The fact is, governments simply transfer responsibilities to citizens without being held accountable for its social contract obligations. When citizens bear the burden of high implicit taxes and governments or institutions fail to provide the basic services, trust in governance is eroded. The trust with the society. To build trust with the society, governments must fulfill their part of the social contract, and citizens must pay their own fair share of taxes. There must be mutual accountability. We must enforce social contracts. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, participatory governance demands open and transparent governance. Governments should be opened up. Citizens have a right to know how public finances are being used. That is why I believe that we must develop a People's Index of Governance with citizen accountability forums for leaders. Lifestyle audits are needed for leaders. Leaders must live within their means, and their means must be honest means. When citizens see their leaders living transparently, being sensitive and not lavish in lifestyle, but delivering good governance, they will trust governments. But when people feel their resources are mismanaged or being used for opulence, widening the gap between the leaders and those they are leading, it builds distrust and despondency, which then permeates the fabric of society. Ladies and gentlemen, leaders must not only be accountable, they must also lead simply. Power is not judged by personal wealth, but by the transformation of lives of people. To earn the trust of people, we must create people wealth, not simply personal wealth. Recently, Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany, a dear friend and one of the people I admire the most in the world, was speaking to us in a meeting with her in Berlin. She told me that she lives in a flat and that she does her own shopping. Startled, I asked why a world leader like the Chancellor of Germany does not have a state house. She responded to me and said that a Chancellor will have to pay a lot of taxes for the privilege of residing in the state house. You can imagine one of the most important leaders in the world lives in a flat, but her nation gives billions, several billions of dollars in support to developing countries. We must therefore re-examine the cost of governance at all levels. That is how trust in governance is built at all levels. Thank you very much.
Let me first of all thank you and also to congratulate the President and also the ICAN members for this particular conference. And I also want to appreciate so far some of the resolutions that I met. I believe it will go a long way to add value to the government institution. Without the accounting procedure, there will be no government. So to us, they are teaching us how we'll be able to carry out the accountability and probity so that the government institution will be able to give account of everything we are doing. So we really thank them and we wish them all the best.
you.